Of all, I want to talk a little bit about tomorrow and the school board meeting, because this is the last school board meeting of the summer before August, and what we've seen over the past week has been an interesting set of developments. Now, for over a year and a half, parents in Loudoun County have been showing up to these school board meetings every 2 weeks to make their voices heard, whether it's for opening schools, whether it's opposing critical race theory, whether it's standing up for someone's First Amendment rights. Now, these parents are taxpaying parents in Loudoun County or taxpaying grandparents in Loudoun County. And they're coming out here to address their school system that their kids, their grandparent kids go to, and that they pay for with their taxes. We've obviously created a movement here, which is made up of parents who are working all day, every day to recall the school board. We all remember in March when you had a private Facebook group with 6 school board members, and in that group, parents were targeted. Dozens of parents were targeted for speaking up at school board meetings about opening schools, about the First Amendment, about critical race theory. And since then, we have built this movement. And we've been collecting signatures now for 6 weeks. And clearly, what we saw last week, leading into this week, is a school board that is now working with special interests and political groups to pack the room. And I want to just warn everybody, as we saw last week, the Loudoun County Democrat Party put out a tweet where they're going to be busing people in from who knows where. We've got special interests like the AFL-CIO coming in, Planned Parenthood, Equality Loudoun, and that's fine. Everyone can come in and say their piece. But I just want to be sure that we all know that we are about civil discourse. We're about exercising our First Amendment rights. And so if things happen and if people start shouting or yelling or trying to provoke, just ignore. Go in there, speak to the school board, let them know what it is you think, and that is how we get the job done. Now, the second news item that I wanted to talk about today is the whole issue with this private Facebook group. That is what gave rise to this recall. That is what has fired up a community, because people are sick of disagreeing and having somebody else, when you have government officials in there especially, being called crazy or racist or fascist. They're tired of it. Just because you disagree with somebody does not mean that you should be labeled a bad person. This country was founded on the right to disagree. But now what do we see? Now that we're gaining traction, now that parents are speaking up and are taking action, you've got Media Matters writing hit pieces on parents because they happen to be a Republican. You've got the head of the teachers union retweeting it. You've got Loudoun Democrats saying they're all right. It's crazy. This is all nonsense. And it's important to know that this movement is about government transparency and accountability. So what I want to do is talk about the second list, or the second Facebook group that we discovered. It's called Loudoun Parents, Teachers, and Staff for Evidence-Based Safe Schooling. Now, this was a private Facebook group that included, this time, 7 school board members. The only school board members that were not in there were John Beatty and Leslie King. And they spent months having conversations about opening schools, closing schools, metrics. It's the same thing. They convened a private meeting to the exclusion of the rest of the community. And if you didn't agree with them, you would get kicked out. And these school board members were not shy about conversing in this room. In fact, even one of the things here says, I just learned that board members are limited in that no more than 2 board members can talk with each other at a time outside of official meetings. This measure is meant to ensure that board members not subvert the official processes. But this also applies to social media. Yes, it does. No more than 2 members can respond to a Facebook post, or it can be considered an illegal meeting. That's a little too narrow. So when we tag all the board members, no more than 2 can legally all respond. Of course, this was before the March group. So now we have 2 private Facebook groups on social media with a quorum of school board members discussing and hearing about school business. That would be like, for instance, if the school board decided they were going to have a comment session, but they were only going to invite their friends to the comment session. They weren't going to put out minutes. They weren't going to notice it. And if you were out in the community concerned about your schools, you don't even know about it because they're doing it in private. So what you see here is a pattern in practice by the Loudoun County Public Schools of operating with without transparency, without accountability, and they keep getting caught. That is what this is about. This is about a parents' movement to take back our schools, to get a seat at the table with how our schools are run. You have special interests, you have activists, that's the only groups they seem to listen to, whereas parents show up every day to try and make their voices heard, and we get ignored. And when we start to make an impact, that's when you get the hit pieces coming, that's when you get the people being bussed in, that's where you get all the special interests and special groups that come in. They're all against the parents. So this is what this is about. This is about a parents' movement to take back their schools and to get a seat at the table on how our public schools are run. So now I'm going to get to my third news item, which I think you all find very exciting. Now, I will say these numbers are from maybe like 3 o'clock today. So there's more out there that we haven't tabulated. But as far as the signature gathering for the removal petitions, here's what we have. Brenda Sheridan, 260 signatures, 32%. Atusa Reeser, 474 signatures, 39%. Leslie King, 563 signatures, 47%. Denise Corbo, 6,064 signatures, 56%. Ian Sorokin, 1,526 signatures, 70%. And Beth Bartz, 895 signatures, 76%, which means 281. Now we've seen we've all seen the posts and on her side. I mean, look. This is somebody who was stripped of her committees by her own school board. This is someone that was censured later by her own school board. And still, after that, she set a fire that created the list-making activity in March 12th, which gave rise to this entire thing. So, starting now, we're launching Operation Finish the Job. We are going to go door to door and get to where we need to with Beth Bartz. We're still going to collect signatures for everyone else, but it's all hands on deck for Leesburg. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Can you explain exactly what they were trying to accomplish with the private Facebook groups? What was their goal here?
It's unclear what their goal was, but I think they were trying to have conversations without having the public involved. With the March Facebook group, I mean, that was clearly to find parents, as they said, they wanted to infiltrate them, expose them publicly, and even hack their websites. And then what you had was another post saying, here's how we're going to list it. We're going to say name, area of residence, and school board member. And then you had dozens of parents being listed for all kinds of activities. And it wasn't long after that somebody that was listed's GoFundMe page was shut down. So I think we see, I just got a letter at my door from somebody saying I was a horrible person, and they had their little logo. So I think what they're trying to do is intimidate people, is to silence people. And then when we talk about critical race theory, this is what it's about, right? It's you cannot have a disagreement. You cannot say, look, let's have a conversation where we're talking about how to fix things, do things need to be fixed, where do they need to be fixed. Rather, it's if you don't agree with me, you are the enemy, and we are going to take care of you.
So is your goal to get all of the school board members?
6.
6?
Yep. Fair. Only the ones that were in the group. Although now we've got 2 more that were in a different group, so I don't know what we're going to do with that. Anyone else?
And who else is in the group again?
In this new group?
No, the old one.
The old one was Brenda Sheridan, Atusa Reeser, Leslie King, Denise Corbo, Ian Sorokin, and Beth Bartz.
And what about
And yes, the Commonwealth Attorney, Buddha Bibaraj, and the Board of Supervisors member, Julie Briskman.
And the principal at Briarwoods High School.
There were a lot of administrators and teachers and government officials in there.
So Ian, we keep hearing the term critical race theory, and one thing opponents of this movement keep hammering on is the fact that that's a college course and not necessarily equity education. How do you guys answer that? Are you going to broaden your vocabulary when it comes to defining what's going on?
I mean, I think we just look at Eric Williams' email where he said, while we are not, well, basically what he said was our instruction modules for teachers and our instructions for students are based in critical race theory. he said it. You look through all the documents, it's all the same terms. It's oppression, it's white privilege, it's white supremacy, it's you're either the oppressor or you're privileged. I mean, you can call it anything you want, but the fact is nobody ever said they were teaching the college course critical race theory, but it is laced throughout everything they're doing in school.
Right, so again, those are all very general terms, kind of defining how race plays a role in society, whereas critical race theory is a college course. Excuse me, that's my intern, as I told you. And he thinks this is all very funny, apparently. So what are you going to do to direct the conversation so the verbiage is a little more accurate? Because again, it just puts a big target on your back by continuing to say critical race theory.
Well, you know, look, all I can say is that the critical race theory has been applied in education for years. I mean, there are many, numerous books on it, numerous studies on it, and you go back to the Equity Collaborative, which is where all this came from starting in 2019, and their entire foundational principle, their framework, is critical race theory. It's on all their documents. So if they're not implementing critical race theory and they want to call it something else, fine, we can talk out the details, but the bottom line is their claim that, well, we're not teaching critical race theory does not answer the question, are you using critical race theory to instruct teachers and then trickle that down to students who learn about these kind of things?
Excuse me, what's your name?
I'm Haley Ford with Loudoun.
Okay.
We're also trained in culturally responsive.
Cultural competency.
Right, which again is the manifestation of critical race theory in education. But again, I would also add that the recall effort, specifically, critical race theory is a brick in that recall effort. It is a big brick. But there's other bricks as well. There's their failure to open schools or to consider other alternatives. Their mocking parents on social media and in their official emails. There's entering into private Facebook groups and violating state public records law, United States Constitution, their own code of conduct. There's attacking people for exercising their First Amendment rights. This recall is many things, and what the key factor here is a school board that is not accountable to the parents, the grandparents, and the taxpayers of Loudoun County.